Somewhere inside a factory in Milton Keynes, there's an engine sitting on a dyno that's already been proven the best on the grid, and the people who built it have been told, by rule, that they're not allowed to make it any better. Not because it failed, because it succeeded. Red Bull spent something close to $1 billion and the better part of 5 years building their own Formula One engine from scratch, poaching a small army of specialists to do it, and they hit the target dead center, the most powerful internal combustion engine in the sport. Understand what that project was supposed to represent. For years, Red Bull had been a customer, dependent on Renault and then Honda for the one component it couldn't build itself, at the mercy of another company's priorities and politics. Building its own engine was meant to be the ultimate act of independence, controlling its own destiny, answering to no one, the final piece that would make the dynasty truly self-sufficient. It was the boldest bet the team had ever made, and the reward for that, under the fine print of the 2026 rules, was a lock on the door. No upgrades, no development budget, nothing. The better the engine turned out to be, the tighter the cage closed around it. There's a strange kind of silence around a situation like that. The sport is fixated on the championship at the front, on Mercedes running away with it, on who's winning on Sundays. Almost nobody is looking at the quieter story underneath, which is that one of the most feared operations in modern Formula One has been quietly, legally, immobilized. And if you follow the thread of who actually benefits from that, it doesn't lead where you'd expect. It doesn't lead to Mercedes. If you want to understand the real shape of what's happening here, and why the manufacturer with the most to gain from Red Bull's paralysis isn't even racing its own engine this year, stay with this and get subscribed, because the most dangerous player in this story is the one nobody's watching. To understand the trap, you have to understand the rule that built it, and it was written, originally, with good intentions. The FIA looked back at 2014, at the way Mercedes arrived at the last big engine reset, with an advantage so vast, it took the rest of the grid 4 years to claw back, and it swore never again. So for 2026, it introduced a mechanism with a bureaucratic name, Additional Development and Upgrade Opportunities, ADUO, designed to stop any single manufacturer running away. The idea was simple: measure everyone's engine and give the ones who fall behind extra help to catch up. Development tokens, budget relief, a leg up for the strugglers. But the mechanism has a flaw sitting right at the center of it, and that flaw is the whole story. Because ADUO only measures one half of the engine, the 2026 power unit is split almost down the middle. Roughly half its output comes from the combustion engine, and roughly half from a massive electrical deployment system. That electrical half is the hardest problem in the sport right now. How much energy you can harvest, how long you can deploy it, how you manage the battery temperatures that decide whether the power's there on the last corner of a lap or gone. It's the single biggest differentiator on the grid, and it's exactly where Mercedes has built a clear and decisive lead. But ADUO doesn't look there. It measures the combustion side, only the combustion side. It grades the teams on half the exam and ignores the half that's actually deciding the results. And that single design choice is what turned Red Bull's greatest achievement into a punishment. Because across the opening races, the FIA's sensors confirmed what the paddock already suspected. Red Bull Ford had built the benchmark combustion engine, the best on the grid, which under ADUO made them the one manufacturer forbidden from improving it, while every rival ranked below them was handed the tokens and the budget to close the gap. And the specifics sting. A manufacturer between 2 and 4% behind the benchmark gets one extra upgrade slot, plus reported cost cap relief of up to $3 million, money carved out of the roughly $215 million spending limit that supposedly binds everyone equally. Fall more than 4% back and you get 2 upgrades, and even more relief. The further from the front you are, the more help you're given, unless you're the one at the very top, in which case you're given nothing at all, and forbidden from earning it. Mercedes, sitting a couple of percent back on combustion but comfortably ahead on the electrical side and leading the championship, was officially classified as needing help. The team winning the title got extra development money. The team that built the best engine got a padlock. Sit with the cruelty of that for a second. Red Bull is losing the actual race. Its car troubled, its results thin, Verstappen fighting where he has no business fighting, and the one department that did its job flawlessly is the one that's been frozen solid. They have upgrades. They're reportedly sitting on the dyno right now, and they are legally barred from bolting them on. And nobody feels the weight of that, quite like the driver. Watch Max Verstappen this season, and you're watching a four-time champion spending his prime in a car that keeps letting him down, retiring from races he'd normally be leading, his frustration surfacing on the radio in ways it rarely did in the dominant years. He's a driver whose entire identity is built on the team beneath him being relentless, always improving, always finding more. Now the part of that machine that worked perfectly has been switched off by decree, and there's nothing his talent can do about a padlock. You can't overtake a regulation. You can't outdrive a spreadsheet. For the first time in a long time, the thing holding him back isn't something he can fix on track. Laurent Mekies, the man now running the team since Christian Horner's departure last year, has been careful and pointed about it in equal measure. He hasn't screamed. He's asked, publicly, for the FIA to be absolutely certain its measurements are right before it hands the advantage to the dominant team and denies it to the one chasing. And privately, sources say, the fear inside Red Bull runs deeper than one bad ruling, because of how easily this could become permanent. If Mercedes and Ferrari simply choose to spend their upgrade tokens on the electrical side rather than the combustion side, Red Bull stays pinned at the top of the ICE rankings indefinitely. Mekies himself has acknowledged the trap. Play it that way, and Red Bull could be checkmated, frozen not for a few months, but for years. That word matters, because a freeze measured in years isn't an engineering problem anymore. It's a human one. Think about who's actually inside that building. To build this engine, Red Bull didn't grow its expertise slowly. It bought it, aggressively, luring hundreds of the sharpest combustion specialists on Earth away from established manufacturers, many of them from Mercedes' own engine division. These are people who define themselves by innovation, by finding the loophole, by extracting the last horsepower nobody else can find. They were paid enormous sums to invent, and they've just been told, indefinitely, to put their tools down. And there's a bitter symmetry to it that the paddock hasn't missed. Red Bull built this engine group by pulling talent out of everyone else's buildings, most notably out of Mercedes' own engine division, poaching the very people who'd learned how to win the last engine era. That's how you build a benchmark power unit in under 5 years. You buy the knowledge rather than grow it. But talent that can be bought can also be bought back. A workforce assembled by poaching is, almost by definition, a workforce with no deep roots. People who've already proven they'll move for the right project. Elite engineers do not sit quietly in a room where they've been forbidden from inventing. That's not what they're built for. And that restlessness, that slow, spreading frustration inside the most talented engine group in the sport, is a resource. A resource that, right now, is going to waste inside Milton Keynes. Which is where the second room in this story comes in. Because while Red Bull sits frozen, another manufacturer has spent this entire season doing the exact opposite of what everyone expected of it. When Toyota moved back toward Formula One, the assumption was obvious. A company that size, with that engineering heritage, would come back the way it left, as a full manufacturer, building its own engine, planting its flag. It did nothing of the sort. Instead, it slipped in sideways, through a technical partnership and title sponsorship with Haas, and pointedly declined to build a 2026 power unit at all. It let Haas keep running customer Ferrari engines. It parked itself in the midfield, and it took, on the surface, the least ambitious path available to it. Set that decision against the Adibo trap, and it stops looking timid and starts looking uncomfortably well-timed. Whether Toyota's leadership genuinely foresaw the engine freeze mess or simply chose caution and got lucky, the outcome is the same. While Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari poured hundreds of millions into an engine war that's now tangled in regulatory knives, Toyota spent the season building quietly and taking on none of that risk. A simulator installed at the Haas base in Banbury, manufacturing and wind tunnel capability warming up at its old facility in Cologne. Its engineers embedded trackside, learning the sport week by week. No billion-dollar engine gamble, no Aduo exposure. Just infrastructure, patience, and position. Here's where the two rooms connect, where a frozen workforce in one and a patient, cash-rich operation in the other start to look like two halves of the same picture. Toyota runs one of the largest, best-funded motorsport operations on the planet, most of it well outside Formula One's cost cap. If the best combustion engineers in the world are sitting in Milton Keynes, growing restless behind a regulatory freeze, there is one obvious destination, with the money, the ambition, and the blank sheet of paper to offer them. A chance to build something new, instead of guarding something they're not allowed to touch. Now, it's worth being careful here. because this is where a good story can outrun the facts. There's no evidence of some signed plan, no secret raid on Milton Keynes, no proof Toyota engineered any of this. Toyota has said, plainly and repeatedly, that it has no plan to build a Formula One engine and no plan to run a works team. Haas insists it controls its own future. Red Bull may yet win its argument with the FIA and force the rule open. Every piece of this has an innocent reading. The point isn't that Toyota built the trap, it's that when the trap closed, Toyota was standing in the one spot on the grid where it could only benefit, untouched by the freeze, unburdened by the engine war, and perfectly placed to catch whatever falls out of it. That date, the one everything quietly points toward, is already circled. Haas's Ferrari engine deal runs to the end of 2028. By 2029, the chaos of this engine formula will have been survived and understood. The mistakes will have been made by other people, with other budgets. And a manufacturer that spent those years watching, learning, and waiting, with the option, if it chose, to fold in the frustrated talent that built the best engine of the era, would arrive not as a nervous newcomer, but as something far more dangerous. Red Bull built its dynasty on one ruthless skill above all others, out-developing everyone else, faster, harder, more aggressively. That was the weapon. And the Aduo Freeze has done something no rival ever managed. It's taken the weapon out of their hands and bolted it to the floor, while the team that dominates the standings gets handed more of it. They spent a fortune, and half a decade, to escape their dependence on other manufacturers, to control their own destiny with their own engine. They built one of the best engines the sport has ever seen, and it became the exact reason they're now trapped. There's a version of this where the FIA blinks, rewrites the rule, and lets Red Bull loose again, and the whole thing evaporates into a bad memory. Maybe that happens, but watch where the pressure's actually coming from, and who's staying very quiet while it builds. Mercedes is happy, it's winning. Ferrari is happy, it's getting tokens. Red Bull is loud, fighting in public, demanding the rule change. And Toyota, the one manufacturer with the most to gain from every extra month that freeze stays in place, isn't saying a word. It's just watching, from a midfield garage, taking notes. So here's the question worth sitting with. If you find a trap someone else built, step around it, and quietly wait to collect what it catches. Does it really matter that you didn't set it? Tell me where you land in the comments.